बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपी जना वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी यशोदनंदन व्रज जन रंजना यशोदनंदन व्रज जन रंजना यमुना तीरावनचारी यमुना तीरावनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपी जन वल्लभा गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजना यमुना तीरावनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय ओम श्रीपाद परमहंस प्रपदाचार्य अष्टोत्तर श्री श्रीमद् डिवाइन ग्रेस भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी श्री प्रभुपाद की जय। जय ओम विश्वपाद परमहंस प्रपदाचार्य अष्टोत्तर श्री श्रीमद् डिवाइन ग्रेस भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती ठाकुर श्री प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। नामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। ऑल गुरुस assembled devotees हरे कृष्ण। ऑल गुरुस assembled devotees हरे कृष्ण। ऑल गुरुस assembled devotees हरे कृष्ण। All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. Hari 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 Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. नारायणं नमस्कृत्यं नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जायमुदीरये। नष्टप्रायेषु भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवतसेवया भगवतीरुत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकीनन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. This is reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 10, verse number 18. We have become high tech. It's coming. It's come. तद्ब्रूय संगो जडवान् निगूढ विज्ञानवीर्यो विचरस्य पारः वाचांसि योगग्रथितानि साधो न क्षमन्ते मनसापि भेत्तुम् तद्ब्रूहि असंगो जडवान् निगूढ विज्ञानवीर्यो विचरस्य पारा वचांसि योगग्रथितानि साधो न क्षमन्ते मनसापि भेत्तुम् तद्ब्रूहि असंगो जडवन्निगूढ विज्ञानवीर्यो विचरस्य पारा वचांसि योगग्रथितानि साधो न क्षमन्ते मनसापि भेत्तुम् तद्ब्रूहि असंगो जडवन्निगूढ विज्ञानवीर्यो विचरस्य पारा वचांसि योगग्रथितानि साधो न क्षमन्ते मनसापि भेत्तुम् तद्ब्रूहि असंगो जडवन्निगूढ विज्ञानवीर्यो विचरस्य पारः वचांसि योगग्रथितानि साधो न क्षमन्ते मनसापि भेत्तुम् तद्ब्रूहि असंगो जडवन्निगूढ विज्ञानवीर्यो विचरस्य पारः वचांसि योगग्रथितानि साधो न क्षमन्ते मनसापि भेत्तुम् तत् therefore ब्रूहि please speak asanga who have no association with the material world jadavat appearing like a deaf and dumb man nigudha completely hidden vijnanavirya who have full knowledge of the spiritual science and are thus very powerful vicharasi you are moving apara who possesses unlimited spiritual glories but the words uttered by you yoga gratithani bearing the complete meaning of mystic yoga sadho o great saintly person na not na of us kshamante are able manasapi even by the mind bhetum to understand by analytical study. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. My dear sir, it appears that the influence of your great spiritual knowledge is hidden. Factually, You are bereft of all material association and fully absorbed in the thought of the Supreme. Consequently, you are unlimitedly advanced in spiritual knowledge. Please tell me why you are wandering around like a dullard. O great saintly person, you have spoken words approved by the yogic process, but it is not possible for us to understand what you have said. Therefore, kindly explain it. Purport: saintly people like Jada Bharat do not speak ordinary words. Whatever they say is approved by great yogis and those advanced in spiritual life. That is the difference between ordinary people and saintly people. The listener must also be advanced to understand the words of such exalted, spiritually advanced people as Jada Bharat. Bhagavad Gita was spoken to Arjuna, not to others. Lord Krishna especially selected Arjuna for instruction in spiritual knowledge because Arjuna happened to be a great devotee and confidential friend. Similarly, great personalities also speak to the advanced, not to Shudras, Vaishyas, women, or unintelligent men. Sometimes it is very risky to give great philosophical instructions to ordinary people. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for the benefit of the fallen souls of Kali Yuga, has given us a very nice instrument, the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. The general mass of people, although Shudras and less, can be purified by chanting this Hare Krishna mantra. Then they can understand the exalted philosophical statements of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Our Krishna consciousness movement has therefore adopted the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra for the general masses. When people gradually become purified, they are instructed in the lessons of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Materialistic people like Stri, Shudra and Dvijabandhu cannot understand words of spiritual advancement. Yet, one can take to the shelter of a Vaishnava, for he knows the art of enlightening even Shudras in the highly elevated subject matter spoken in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayyam Dadati Shwapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurum Shri Utapadakammalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Niti Namine Vansha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhobhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauratvishe Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhaktashaktikam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Seeking blessings of all the Vaishnavas to speak on this wonderful subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam. This is from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 10, entitled Maharaj Rahuguna Meets Jada Bharat, verse number 18. A very interesting section is going on, where we see how Krishna has made so much arrangements for Bharat Maharaj in the 3 lives. As Bharat Maharaj, he had almost reached up to the stage of Bhava, and then the next life, Krishna very mercifully gave him the remembrance, the consciousness, although in a deer's body, and now in the body of Jadabharat, he was extremely cautious. So basically we see how extra cautious Jadabharat was. Right from his childhood, he acted as if he was a deaf, dumb and dull man. Like it is said, दूध का जला भी छाछ भी फूक फूक के पीता है. It's like if the milk is hot, the cat has drunk a hot milk, then even if at other time if it's a buttermilk, still it will be, and it's like extra cautious too. So Jadabharat is similar, that he just doesn't want to take any more chances, that I've already gone through a lot, and this time I don't want to give in to any material attachments, even if it is in the form of compassion. So he was pretty clear about it, which is why right from the childhood he acted as if a deaf, dumb and dull man. And his father was quite affectionate to him, but nevertheless, even though born in a Brahmana family, could not teach much, although he tried, but could not teach much Brahmanical etiquettes and all. He was trying everything, he was doing everything opposite. And of course, after the parents departed, mother and father departed, then his brothers started exploiting him, 9 step-brothers and 1 sister that he had. But eventually, he, in spite of being exploited, he was not at all revolting. That is a speciality in Jadabharat's life, what we see. There is practically no response, there is no pratikriya, there is no reaction that he is providing. And eventually, of course, there were dacoits who were searching for Narabali, human sacrifice, and they took him as a human sacrifice. Eventually, goddess Kali came and killed all the dacoits, and thus Jadabharat was saved. And now eventually, what we see in this particular chapter is Maharaj Rahugana, who is on the way to Kapilashram. He's about to hear some spiritual discourses, and on the way, by the will of Providence, one particular carrier person is missing. There are 4 persons required for the palanquin carrying, and at the river, near the river Ikshumati, they happened to spot Jadabharat. So when they spotted him, it was a stout body, so he felt this is a fit person to fill the gap, the 4th person to be filled. Sometimes it is, dukkha aushatam tadapi dukkham. Sometimes it is like this medicine can be worse than the original solution. So they thought one more person added will be helpful, but then eventually what we see, it was causing more material inconvenience. But of course, from a spiritual perspective, Rahugana definitely benefited a lot. From a material perspective, it caused apparently more inconvenience, but that situation actually triggered in such a way that Jadabharat, that Rahugana, King Rahugana is getting the valuable association of Jadabharat. And very interestingly, what we see is Jadabharat did not start giving instructions neither to his brother nor to the dacoits. But here we see he started speaking to King Rahugana. As the Acharyas explained, that to his brothers, the mercy was given in the form of darshan of a pure devotee in the form of Jadabharat himself. And for the dacoits, they got darshan of goddess Kali. Whereas King Rahugana is now in a qualified position, in order to, sort of ripened position, in order to hear the messages of Jadabharat, which is what is being happening. Another interesting thing we can notice is that Jadabharat, King Rahugana is on his way to hear spiritual discourses, on the way to go to Kapilashram. But before even reaching, he is getting a spiritual discourse in the journey itself, on the way. He doesn't even have to reach the destination. It's like in the initial days, Brahmanand Prabhu, he had met Srila Prabhupada, and he was one of the very few people who were actually working, because many others were hippies. And Prabhupada seemed to like that, he was working and he was responsible. And at the end of his, he would get around $100 a month, $100 a week in those times. And he would give quite a lot of it to Srila Prabhupada for the expansion of the movement. So Prabhupada was liking him, but eventually somehow he had already visited India once before even he met Srila Prabhupada. So he always had in his mind, I want to go to India, I want to go to India as a spiritual seeker. I want to search for a spiritual master. And just in those times, there was Umapati Prabhu. Again, they were very new people. They were just about to join, or just in those phases. So Umapati Prabhu said that, why go to India when India has come to New York? When Srila Prabhupada has come, who is representing the best of India actually. Actually, if one comes to India, he may get such a supermarket and so much confusion and so much hodgepodge may be there. No? But the best of India in the form of Srila Prabhupada, the spiritual ambassador, has come to New York, then why to go all the way? So it's like similarly King Rahuguna doesn't even have to reach the Kapilashram. On the way itself, he is getting much elevated, advanced spiritual discussions before even reaching. So it's very, very interesting because Jadabharat, of course, when initially Jadabharat was conscious of the ants, it was causing inconvenience to King Rahuguna. So King Rahuguna starts chastising him sarcastically. And sometimes that sarcastic chastisement can be very painful. Like in the case of the brothers, they were exploiting in the form of not giving him good food, burnt rice and all that. So that was on a bodily platform. The dacoits, they actually tried to kill the body. They actually tried to attack the entire body, offer him as a human sacrifice. Still, Jadabharat did not respond. That goes to show that he was quite sthita pragya. Even if it's burnt rice is given, there is no reaction. I mean, there is no hamari mange puri karo. There is a hartal. That's nothing like that. He just accepted it. Even when he was about to be sacrificed as a human sacrifice, offered as a human sacrifice, there was no revolt. But here, it's a sarcastic chastisement which Maharaj Rahuguna is offering. So this is more on an egoistic level. We can say that in a very superlative degree. Shri Radha Vrindavan Chandra Bhagavan ki jai, Shri Jagannath Baldev Subhadra ki jai, Shri Gaur Nithai ki jai, Shri Prabhupada ki jai. So initially his body was about to be exploited. Eventually his whole human body was about to be offered as a sacrifice. And now here it's on an egoistic platform. He's being tortured, sort of sarcastic statements, like as if Rahuguna is saying that oh, your body is so weak, you have become so old. And it looks like the others are not cooperating with you. It's all opposite because his body was stout, he was young. And in fact, he was the one who was causing problem because other three palanquin carriers were very conscious of properly carrying King Rahuguna. But he was the one who was causing the disturbance. But in spite of being attacked on an egoistic platform, even at this point of time, Jadabharat does not respond or does not revolt. So in one sense, we can say as a Sthita Pragya, he has crossed all this so-called disturbances of the material world. Sometimes maybe in a book distribution, when we are distributing books, somebody comes and makes some sarcastic statements. Kitna milta hai? How much do you get? Just that one statement can trigger a lot of emotions. So it depends how do we respond. In this case, Jadabharat was not even tolerating. Jadabharat was not affected. Toleration is after we are affected, then we choose whether to respond. It's like some people on a gross platform can just physically fight, or maybe we can speak some harsh words. But in this case, Jadabharat is not even affected because he's on a very elevated spiritual platform. It's not that he's tolerating it. He's not even affected. It's like, as Lord Buddha says, if someone speaks harsh words, it's like, don't accept the gift. If someone is offering a gift, if you don't even receive the gift, it's not yours. It's, as they say, the ball is back in his court. You've not even received it. So here Jadabharat is not even being affected. Where is the question of tolerating those words? But after some time, he was silent and he continued to carry the palanquin. But again, eventually the ants he's conscious of the ants, and now this time King Rahuguna gets really wild. Now he wants to really chastise and he speaks some harsh words. And this is the time when Jadabharat begins to enlighten him. Because now he feels, as Prabhupada also mentions in just 2-3 purports before, verses before in the translations, Prabhupada mentions being qualified. At this point of time, King Rahuguna was qualified to receive the spiritual instructions, and taking compassion on King Rahuguna, also being qualified, now Jadabharat is beginning to enlighten him. As we saw, to his brothers, he did not revolt. To the dacoits, he did not. But now to Rahuguna, initially he kept silent, but now he is beginning to speak spiritual instructions. What master and servant? This is a very temporary situation. Right now I'm a palanquin carrier and you may be sitting on the palanquin. Tomorrow the situation can be reversed. So when he hears such words, it's like striking to Rahuguna, because it's like he's not heard such things, just like we say about Narad Muni telling Mrigari, why don't you kill the animals half dead? Or Srila Prabhupada telling Ambrish Prabhu, Alfred Ford, where is your grandfather? The first time he's meeting and he's being asked, where is your grandfather now? So he's like, it's very thoughtful. Yeah, he's passed away, but now where is he? So it's very thoughtful and introspective thing. So when Jadabharata is speaking, that's a very temporary situation. Now you're sitting on the palanquin and I am your servant, but this situation can be reversed any moment in different lifetimes. So this was very striking to Rahuguna, and he understood that he is a great soul. He is not an ordinary person, and immediately he fell flat on the ground, offering obeisances. Please forgive my offenses. And yesterday was a very famous verse where he is saying, I'm not afraid of the Indra's thunderbolt or Shiva's trident, but I'm afraid of Vaishnava Aparad. Vaishnava Aparad. So very beautifully he comes to this wonderful conclusion, and is very eager to actually hear from Jadabharat. So he says, it appears as if your great spiritual knowledge is hidden. You appear like an ordinary person. It seems you also have a Brahman thread, but you appear as if, you don't appear to be spiritual. Your spiritual knowledge is appearing to be, influence of your great spiritual knowledge is hidden. So there are many things which may be hidden, and there are certain things, certain processes may be required in order to extract it. Sometimes a person may be an atheist, which unless we talk to the person, we never know. He may behave as a gentleman, but only when we talk, and when we talk about a theological situation, perspectives, then we may understand. Sometimes a person may act as a great devotee, but he may be a sahajiya. As Srila Prabhupada says, if somebody tries to exhibit ecstatic emotions, then he says we can take a stick and try to go near the person, and we will immediately come to know whether he really has the symptoms or not. So there are certain ways by which we can try to understand. There are certain ways by which the truth can be revealed or unveiled or exposed. But there can be many things which are hidden, and it may require certain processes. Sometimes there are certain processes which may be required. Sometimes a great soul may have to reveal. Like in the case of when Raghunath Bhatta Goswami was traveling with this Ramdas Vishwas, he felt he is a great devotee of Lord Ram. He's all constantly chanting the names of Ram, constantly chanting. But when he met Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not even look at him. He practically neglected him. So eventually Raghunath Bhatta Goswami understand. But so basically, although he chanted the names of Ram, but he was in the mood of becoming one with Ram. So that's a very impersonalistic tendencies or Mayavadi tendencies. So things may be very, very hidden, and it may require some process to extract it. As Chanakya Pandit says, Pushpe Gandhe, Tile Tailam. There is fragrance in the flower, but how to extract it? There is no mechanical process how to extract it, how to extract the oil from the sesame seeds. So there may be some processes required to extract the ghee from the milk. Similarly, from a person who discriminates may have to adopt some processes to extract if things are hidden. If the spiritual knowledge is hidden, like we see in the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam about Avanti Brahman or Avadut Brahman, looking from external, one will not be able to make out whether the person is spiritual. Like Avadut Brahman is just lying on the ground in the forest. In fact, even his body is quite stout. So it's very unlikely. Somebody may, if one looks from an external perspective, charma chakshu, one will not be able to see the hidden spirituality of the person. More than that, what to speak of the sadhana bhakta, or what to speak of Mayavad concept, or what to speak of sahajiya tendencies. Sometimes even an avatar can be hidden in the form of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Channa avatar. There are such beautiful discussions between Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya and Gopinath Acharya, that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is arguing that this is Triyugi. In this particular age, there is no possibility of having an avatar in the age of Kali. And Gopinath Acharya was trying to convince him, trying to explain him, and eventually he said that unless you have received the mercy, prasad lesha, unless you have received a tinge of mercy of the Supreme Lord, you will not be able to understand this. So there may be sometimes a great soul has to explain that, has to explain a process. When Gadadhar Pandit is about to meet Pundarik Vidyanidhi, seeing him sitting on a throne and looking at the mirror and combing his hair and chewing pan, and someone is offering chamar, looking at all those opulences, he was very bewildered. Have you got me to the right place? You said you are going to take me to a very spiritually advanced person. Have we come to the right place? So that time Mukunda had to sing a beautiful verse of how Krishna is the most merciful. Tam kam vadayalam sharanam rajema. So when that verse was sung, Pundarik Vidyanidhi was rolling on the ground and his ecstasy could not be contained. So sometimes some process may be required in order to extract the hidden spirituality. And more than that, spiritual as acharyas or as great spiritual visionaries, we can see that they are able to tap the hidden potential in every person. Because ultimately each person is having a constitutional position is of Jivara Swarupa Krishna and Nitya Das. But how to tap? First of all, how to see the spark and how to tap that spark. That is what we learn from the lives of great acharyas. And towards the end, Prabhupada mentions that one can take to the shelter of a Vaishnava, for he knows the art of enlightening even Shudras in the highly elevated subject matter spoken in Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. So Vaishnava acharyas, they are actually able to understand they are able to see the spark, they are able to fan the spark. Particularly if you see in the life of Srila Prabhupada, after going to the West, preaching to the hippies, what all situations that he went through, the so-called the materialistic inconveniences that he went through, and hardly any support in order to establish a spiritual movement. But in all the circumstances, Srila Prabhupada tolerated many things. As Prabhupada mentions, when he was asked one of the things that particularly he mentions about how I was keeping my own food in the refrigerator of Sally Agarwal, where they had even kept meat also. In the same refrigerator, I had to keep my food and I had to accept that. So there are so many things that as a great Vaishnava, Srila Prabhupada had to tolerate, but nevertheless he could see the spark. He could see that if hardly 4 or 5 of students are coming and Prabhupada expresses some hope, it seems they are interested in the Sanskrit. It seems they are interested in spirituality, just looking at 4 or 5 people. So Prabhupada has seen the spark, tried to see the spark and fanned that spark, which is why we see that people who were apparently Mlechas and Yavanas, but in the association of the great Vaishnava, in the taking shelter of Lord Srila Prabhupada, they could become very, very advanced, very, very advanced. So what we see is sometimes this spiritual knowledge appears to be hidden. So if we try to analyze from our side, what may cause such spiritual knowledge to be hidden? Because if we are not even looking at it from a spiritual perspective, it naturally appears to be hidden. It's like if we don't have respect, if one sees from a external vision, from a charma chakshu, it is very difficult to be able to gain spiritual knowledge from the person. To take a very gross example of Vritrasur, who was in a demoniac body. There was hardly any chance for anyone, normal, ordinary person, to consider that he may be a devotee. But only when he started speaking, his great spiritual wisdom was revealed. Now that may be very gross, but sometimes a person may not be so gross in a demon's body, but if we are looking from a materialistic perspective, or if we are looking from ordinary vision, the charma chakshu, not the shastra chakshu, then sometimes we get bewildered and the spiritual knowledge that the person possesses actually appears hidden. That means what? It's not accessible. Like the Vedas are called as revealed scriptures. Well, it appears open, anybody can open and read it. Or the Bhagavad Gita has most confidential knowledge, but the most widely read, most widely distributed books. So it may appear to be hidden, and unless we have certain respect towards it, we will not be able to actually see the hidden essence or the spiritual knowledge. Even during Srila Prabhupada's time, when when His Holiness Gaur Govind Swami Maharaj was about to be getting sannyas. At those times, there were other Prabhupada disciples who were quite, they had spent many years with Prabhupada now, and they said, they felt that, this person has recently come to taken to spirituality. And hardly 2 months you have met him and you are ready to give him sannyas. And they were saying that Prabhupada is a new man. And Prabhupada turned to them and said, you are a new man. He is practicing devotional service since his childhood. He is born in a Vaishnava family. You are a new man. You have apparently come recently, but he has been practicing for so many years. So if we see from external vision, we will not be able to have respect. And we lose the opportunity to gain the spiritual wisdom from a person. I heard about His Holiness Bhanu Swami Maharaj. Many times he's in Chennai temple. One of the places, not sure of the place, but one of the places I had heard that because he looks quite young and he doesn't often carry danda also, and sometimes he wears like the saffron t-shirt, so he looks like a common normal brahmachari. So sometime Mataji was cooking in the kitchen, DT kitchen, and she needed some assistance. It's quite natural. We are always struggling for services. We are always struggling for resources. So she was about to do some cooking, and she felt we need some more help, assistance. And coming out, she was searching if there is anybody. When she comes out and she spotted Bhanu Swami, he was sitting and he was chanting or something. So she called him and said, can you please help me in the kitchen? And so he just quietly went up and did the service, assistance, and just come back. So later on that Mataji, she realized, because probably she was not so well versed and did not know about the personality. So sometimes it may appear, because when we see from external vision, we are not able to access the spirituality of the great souls when we don't have that respect. Even if we have respect, but we may not be qualified to receive. That's why sometimes the spiritual personalities keep it hidden. If one is not qualified, he doesn't reveal. Just like we see the case of the brothers. Jada is not giving any spiritual instructions. And again, as acharyas as give their commentary, the brothers were in like mode of passion, and the dacoits were in the mode of ignorance. They were not qualified. But but in the case of Rahuguna, he's seeing he's in the position of a king, has a potential of being a Raja Rishi. He's going to the Kapilashram to hear spiritual discourses. It's more ripened. And seeing that there is a qualification, then he is ready to give that. So if we are not qualified from our side, which as Bhagavad Gita explains, Tadviti Pranipatena Pariprashnena Sevaya, if we don't have that qualification from our side, the spiritual knowledge may appear to be hidden. The person may not transfer that spiritual knowledge. Even if we are qualified and even if we are respectful, the third case is if we are not sufficiently hungry for spirituality, again the spiritual knowledge may appear to be hidden in the person. If one does not show that hunger, just like I said, hunger is an appetizer, and then whatever we eat, it's easy to digest. Similarly, when one doesn't have spiritual hunger, then whatever one receives does not actually have an impact, does not actually have a deep impact. Which is why Prabhupada is quoting in the purport about Arjuna. When Arjuna was in the midst of the battlefield, he was in a very desperate situation. Single-handedly, he could kill the entire Kauravas, and he had already demonstrated that. He had defeated the Kauravas single-handedly. But now in the midst of the battlefield, he felt like Hridaya Daurbalyam and so many things that he went through, that I'm able to see my own Swajana, my own kinsmen, and I'm able to see my superiors in the form of Bhishma and Drona. I don't wish to fight. His Gandiya bow is slipping. And Lord Shri Krishna is able to see a great qualification in Arjuna as Bhakto Sime Sakha Cheti. He is a great devotee as well as a friend to the Supreme Lord. And seeing this qualification, Lord Shri Krishna is ready to reveal that spiritual knowledge. In a similar way, Parikshit Maharaj, very, very hungry for spirituality. Just gave up the kingdom when he comes to know of the news that he is going to leave his body in 7 days. and extremely sincere and extremely eager for taking spirituality, he just goes to fast at the banks of the Ganges. And Krishna arranges. When that hunger is there, that spiritual hunger is there, Krishna makes that right arrangement. Like we see in the case of Dhruva Maharaj, right from nowhere, Narada Muni is coming in the forest and giving that spiritual knowledge, that training. So if we don't have a proper respect, then the spiritual knowledge appears to be hidden. Or if we are not qualified, again it appears to be hidden. Or if we do not have sufficient eagerness to take spirituality, again it appears to be hidden. And that is why, as Prabhupada mentions here, the listener must also be advanced to understand. There is a bowl, it's like the receiving bowl. That receiving bowl is not, one is not qualified in the form of eagerness, in the form of respect towards the speaker, in the form of rendering service for purification. Again, tadviti pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya, submissive inquiry and rendering of service and offering of obeisances. Unless this aspect is there, one actually does not benefit from the association. That's why Prabhupada says the listener must also be advanced in order to understand. That's why knowing the level of audience, as Lord Shri Krishna has very beautifully explained, like in other organizations or other religions, many times we find, as like Lord Jesus Christ mentions, I have a lot to speak, but you will not be able to bear it. So there's a lot that he can provide, but basically based on the level of the audience, it applies differently. People may not be able to receive it. But in the case of Arjuna, Lord Shri Krishna has very beautifully given the entire knowledge. Jnanam teham savijnanam idam vakshyami asheshatah yat jnatva neha bhuyonyaj Jnatavyam avasishyate. I am giving you complete knowledge, both nominal and phenomenal, knowing which there will be nothing further to be known. So we can be really grateful that the scriptures that we have is so complete in itself. If there is a difficulty, it's in what we are able to access. If there is a difficulty in terms of whether we have sufficient hunger in order to approach the scriptures and the devotees in order to reveal that hidden spiritual knowledge. And Prabhupada mentions, that's why in the purport, that's why great personalities sometimes speak to the advanced and not to the ordinary Shudras, Vaishyas, Stri and unintelligent men. And that's why you find Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he spoke to very, in one sense, personalities who were quite renowned, who were quite learned, personalities like, TLC, if you find teachings of Lord Chaitanya, sections, chapters of speaking with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, then speaking with Ramananda Rai, speaking with Rupa Goswami, speaking with Sanatana Goswami, and speaking with Prakashananda Saraswati. So he is not speaking to the mass, he is speaking to the great souls. Of course, Prabhupada does mention, at the same time, for the masses, Prabhupada made, Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu made this arrangement of Harinam Sankirtan. Particularly when he's going to South India, literally that 2 years of beautiful journey, so much mercy was distributed in the form of holy names. And that's why Prabhupada says, sometimes it is very risky to give great philosophical instructions to ordinary people. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu spoke to the classes there, but of course he made arrangement. It's not that he didn't meet the other people. He made arrangement for Harinam Sankirtan, and of course the many other preachers. He did mention to Lord Nityananda, you go and preach. You go to Bengal, you go to Orissa. There are definitely devotees were appointed, allocated to preach. Definitely, no doubt about that. But for the masses, Harinam Sankirtan. As Prabhupada says, sometimes it is very risky to give great philosophical instructions to ordinary people. So once Srila Prabhupada was in Paris. So there were some radical students. There was about 2,500 people, 2,500 in the audience, and there was 50 devotees on the stage. They did kirtans before Prabhupada's lecture began, and after the kirtan ended, then Prabhupada was invited on the dais, and he started speaking. And he spoke about the glories of, not exactly the glories, but it began with the Bible. The word is God, and started about connected with the holy name, importance of the holy name. But eventually people were sort of in an opposing mood. And Prabhupada did mention about when one is disobedient, then one is punished. One is punished. So the people who were there, they did not like it. So of course there was a translation going on. There was a Mataji, Jyotirmayi Mataji was translating for Prabhupada line by line. And when people were protesting, Prabhupada was asking even in between also, what are they trying to address? So she said basically they don't like the fact that, because they don't like the government. So when you say that disobedient will be punished, so they are not liking it. So they are revolting. So Prabhupada said, even if you don't like it, but the material nature is so strong that if we go against the laws of nature, one will be punished. So Prabhupada was speaking on a spiritual platform, but the audience was taking it on a material platform or a political situation, and then they started revolting, partere. So Prabhupada asked, what does they mean? What do they mean? So Prabhupada, the person was translating, she said, very sadly, she said, they are saying, get down. Get down from the asana. So Prabhupada started explaining, saying that Prabhupada said, there are two things. One is about the spirituality, that I am talking on a spiritual platform. You may be taking it on a material, political situation. Then Prabhupada said, even if I speak from the floor, I am ready to sit on the floor. Just because I am sitting on the floor does not mean you will understand this knowledge better. They are offering me this Vyasasana. I am ready to speak from the floor also, but that does not mean you will understand this knowledge any better. Then Prabhupada said, if you are also spiritually advanced, you can also sit on this asana, and the 50 devotees who were there on the stage, Prabhupada said, all of them will bow down to you. Then there was a complete silence. It was as if everybody agreed for that. But eventually again there were some disturbances. Another person got up and he started speaking something initially for the devotees and later on against. So it was like hodgepodge, because those time people are not having any clarity of thoughts. Prabhupada said, just stop it and just have kirtans. And then all the devotees started having kirtans. So it was like, it looks like they were not ready to hear that spiritual instructions. In another situation, not getting into more details in shortage of time, but another place where Srila Prabhupada went, this was in Australia. This is again a stage program. That this time Madhusudan Maharaj Swami was there. And towards the end, basically again, these people were radicals. They were talking about political situation. They wanted some political support. They said, are you ready to help us stage a revolution against the US? So all those kind of things. So even Madhusudan Swami also tried to intervene and tried to explain, it's not that Prabhupada's, we are basically for the US. Prabhupada actually went to the US because he got a free ticket to cargo ship, he got a ticket to go to US. If you would have invited him to Australia, he would have probably come here. So he was trying to explain that. But people were not very conducive to hear those instructions. In fact, that situation became so worse that the devotees were afraid of the physical, any physical attacks by the audience. So they were more concerned about Prabhupada's safety, and they had to make Prabhupada exit through a side exit, not the main doors. But even there, people were standing there. So it was a very tense situation. Somehow, fortunately, no devotees were attacked. They got into the van and they started moving. When they were moving, the people were still there. The mob sort of, one of the girls kicked with her boot to the van, when the van is going on. And then some others started actually throwing some stones. And eventually when they were passing through the campus, then there was some underpass or something within the campus, and there were some students already ready there. They actually threw black paint on the van. And Prabhupada was just silent throughout the journey, looking very disgusted. And then Prabhupada said, maybe we have to, maybe we need to address only when we are invited, wherever we are invited, and not, because these were like free, open programs, anybody may come. So Prabhupada says, sometimes it is very risky to give great philosophical instructions to ordinary people. But Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for the benefit of the fallen souls of Kali Yuga, has given us a very nice instrument, the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Which is why, again, in the purport, it's like there is a gradual evolution. Not everybody can connect only to the spiritual discourse, but most can connect with prasadam, majority. And then most can connect with kirtans, musical instruments, along with the accompaniment of musical instruments. And then eventually some may connect with yoga, as we see typically in the West. Some may connect with cooking classes or something like that. And then as gradually, as Prabhupada says, our Krishna consciousness movement has therefore adopted the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra for the general masses. When people gradually become purified, they are instructed in the lessons of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. And Prabhupada ends this purport with saying, one can take to the shelter of a Vaishnava, for he knows the art of enlightening even Shudras in the highly elevated subject matter spoken in the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. So it depends. Different people may connect at different levels. Some may get connected to Prasadam, some may get connected to the Kirtans. Like we hear in the case of Bhakti Charu Maharaj, the first book he read was Nectar of Devotion. So that's a very different platform. He doesn't need a step-by-step thing, because it's a very elevated Vaishnavas. So different people may connect differently, but if we talk about the gradual masses, then there may be a step-by process by which they may get more connected and more interested to take to the spirituality. But if one takes shelter of a Vaishnava, then the glory is the Vaishnava can give the great spiritual knowledge, although it's not meant for all, or although everybody may not be able to appreciate immediately, but the Vaishnava is able to customize it in such a way that even Shudras will eventually be able to appreciate this great treasure of the spiritual knowledge that is there in the Vedas. So when one takes shelter of the Vaishnava, that is great Vaishnavas like Narad Muni or Srila Prabhupada himself. Narad Muni's variegatedness of preaching we have seen, right from Mrigari to Vyasadeva. There is a whole range. In between, of course, small boys like Dhruva Maharaj, Prahlad Maharaj, so much. So he is such a wide variety of preaching. And of course, what to speak of Srila Prabhupada as an Acharya, what kind of preaching that he has done outside, abroad, and then again coming back to India and expanding the movement. So as a great Vaishnava, when one takes shelter of a Vaishnava, then the Vaishnava knows the art of enlightening even the Shudras. So knowing the hidden potential, seeing the hidden potential, tapping the hidden potential, fanning the spark of that hidden potential, great Vaishnavas, great Acharyas are able to enlighten even the Shudras in this highly elevated subject matter spoken in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. And that is why we have to be very grateful to the such Acharyas who have in a very genius way, they have provided us wonderful morning program. They have provided us the scriptures and given the translations and purports to get benefited from, and so much services opportunity that is available within the Krishna consciousness movement. So we can express our great gratitude to Srila Prabhupada and of course to so many others who have assisted him in this mission, by which we are all also getting an opportunity to get connected to spirituality in our own ways. Thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for a very wonderful class. Prabhuji, one point it really hit me was about sarcastic remarks. Like you mentioned, how this king is sarcastically chastising this Jad Bharata. And we see many places in Bhagavatam, these sarcastic remarks are used. Like Shringi he is doing sarcastic remarks against Parishit Maharaj. So Prabhuji, how to understand this? Because sarcastically, if we say something to some devotee, he will feel so bad. So can we use this in Krishna's service? Or if it is not, then how to understand that these examples are given in Srimad Bhagavatam? Please explain, Prabhuji.
You are saying how can we use sarcastic remarks in Krishna's service?
If possible, Prabhuji.
If it is possible.
Yeah.
You are trying to see some positivity in it.
Yes, Prabhuji.
You want to do it.
No, Prabhuji.
Generally, the nature of the personality traits. I myself have that tendency, so I can talk about it. We have a tendency to speak sarcastic. Sarcastic remark means what, as I said, in terms of Rahugana, what we hear, oh, your body is so young, the body is so weak, he has grown old, looks like the other three are not cooperating with you. It's exactly the opposite, right? He wants to say the other, but he's speaking like this. It actually comes out of a tendency of a superiority complex, where one feels above, and it actually, he knows that this will actually affect him more. It's like, there are different ways of which one may show the reaction or a response. Sometimes a person just speaks harshly. So there are some people who feel that, at least you communicate. If you keep mum, then I don't know anything. So some people choose to keep mum, some people speak out harshly, and some people, a little more elevated, speak sarcastic remarks. What hurts whom depends on our personality also. There is a personality of the speaker and there is a personality of the hearer. So some people, they are comfortable to say, whatever it is, tell it right on the face. But if you tell sarcastically, it hurts me. There are others who say that, see, even if I'm wrong, but don't tell me on the face, you correct it in an indirect way. Right? So there are, depending on our personalities, we will take it different. Different people may get hurt differently. Unfortunately, sometimes some sarcastic remarks, people may take it as a glory. Oh, he's telling me I am so young. He's telling me that others are actually not cooperating. This is, if we are in ignorance, we will actually start feeling, actually what he's saying, wonderful. But he's in so much ignorance that he is not able to understand. Actually, it is against him, but he is taking it as on face value. So that will show the ignorance. So different, as per our personality, it may hurt differently. So if and in this is kind of cases where one can actually speak out. Maybe if you deal this way, it will be better for me. But from the perspective of the hearer, again, he is also sort of conditioned with his personality. He is more comfortable in sarcasm than in direct or keeping mum. So every one of us has to work depending on whether we are the speaker or the hearer. But sarcastic speech to be engaged in the glory of Krishna. Maybe you can hear the great words of the how acharyas give commentary on the sarcastic speeches given by apparently people who are conditioned or getting demoniac, like we see Indra is speaking about Lord Shri Krishna, Balisham, small boy, talkative, and so. But if you hear the commentary of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, each of those words, the bhushan becomes dushan becomes bhushan. The apparent blemish can be seen as very beautiful words. Lord Shri Krishna, when he was speaking to Rukmini, Krishna says, now this is a time when Rukmini has, both of them have children, their children are married, and of course we know 16,108 wives, and it's a great kingdom in Dwarka. At this point of time, when Krishna has grandchildren, he's telling to Rukmini, why don't you get married to someone else? Why did you choose me of all the people? Shishupal was already ready. In fact, it was arranged for you. And by the way, there were so many other personalities. By the way, people don't even know my caste. And then he went on to say so many things. And Rukmini couldn't take that, so much that she fainted. So maybe afterwards, Rukmini would have had a discussion. See, don't speak like this. You can speak, be mom, you can speak right directly or whatever, but this is something I can't take it. Right?
Prabhuji, just last point I wanted to ask. Like Bhagavatam, we say a spotless Purana, but then we see such chastisements which is given to devotees in Bhagavatam also. So how to understand it?
Well, chastisement, sorry.
Like in Shringi's case, Prabhuji, like we read Shringi's indirectly he's chastising Parikshit Maharaj.
So what is
So
the word
he used
Shringi,
some
sir?
sarcastic words, like the king is like a dog or something like that he says. So indirectly he's speaking bad words against pure devotees. So how to understand this, Prabhuji?
Well, definitely that is not something that we have to follow in the footsteps. That is something we have, some from the scriptures, we know how to behave, and we also know how not to behave. Some people teach us how to behave, and some people teach us how not to behave. In both cases, they are glorious. By the criticism. Well, that is, and of course, some things can be taken as their personality. Second thing is, it's ultimately will of the Lord. There is providence. There are multiple factors. At various levels, things are arranged. I mean, ultimately it was arranged in a way that ultimately Srimad Bhagavatam has to descend for the benefit of all of us, the humankind. So there had to be a situation. We can see again Sarmishtha and Devayani. You'll find, or you find, when basically anything you take, Daksha Prajapati's Yagya, so many things, there is back and forth things will go on. And sarcastically, again, Daksha also says, oh, somehow I gave, but initially he starts with saying, actually I don't have any envy towards Shiva. He starts with this, but then what he speaks is all sarcastic, and then eventually he goes on to blasphemy also. So there is not something that we have to follow in the footsteps. We should know that, okay, this is not something I should refrain from this. This is something I cannot. And what to speak of when it is directed towards a great soul. That's why we see, when we are neophyte, we don't know what kind of a problem or what kind of a difficulty I may cause. What is the impact? If you talk about impact analysis, what is the impact I have caused by my one statement or by my some slight behavior? It can sometimes be just a looking of the glance or from the talks. My speech and my behavior, what impact it has caused. The more neophyte we are, the more unconscious we are. The more we mature and become more sensitive, the more conscious we are. Which is why you find Shringi reacted like this. But how did Shamik Rishi react? He felt pained. He felt so disturbed, he did not, he immediately felt, let me at least go and inform. Let us inform the king, because if 7 days afterwards the king suddenly, because he thought at least let him prepare. Shamik Rishi was, but he was feeling so disturbed. He was not feeling that why Parishad Maharaj why did Parishad Maharaj offend me? He did not take that as offense. Rather, he was more disturbed by the child's reaction. That's why it is said sometimes people are more disturbed by the response that we give or the reaction that we give for an apparent mistake that has happened. The response can be sometimes more ghastly than the original mistake itself. What Parishad Maharaj did was a slight thing, and which can be sort of ignored. We're not saying that was wonderful to do, but definitely that can be something ignored, and not a very big thing. But the punishment meted out, that he has to leave his body in 7 days, that was something very enormous, Herculean, and that is not something to be given. What to speak of for a Vaishnava, what to speak of for a Raja Rishi. So that was definitely not accepted. So Shamik Rishi responded very differently. So we learn from Shamik Rishi that he felt really pained about it. So we should not follow Shringi, but Shamik Rishi is more better in terms of teaching. Hare Krishna. You want to add something? You want to add something?
Prabhuji, is it required that everybody has to develop taste in philosophical discourses? Sometimes people may be more interested in other aspects like kirtans and all, as you are saying. Because sometimes person's intellectual capacity may differ, and it appears that interest in philosophy quite a lot depends on intellectual capacity. And second part of the question is it that the person, from the purport it appears that those who are like masses type of people, they hear kirtans or they sing kirtans, and eventually they get elevated to become capable of understanding philosophical discourse. So is it like that the person who is interested in philosophical discourse is more elevated than the person who is more interested in kirtan or something like that?
I think there are two different questions. So like if you see from a yoga ladder perspective, there is karma kanda, karma yoga, ashtanga yoga, dhyana yoga, and then eventually bhakti yoga. So Prabhupada says, although karma yoga is so far away apparently, but in one sense it is very close to bhakti yoga. There is more great potential. Even by performing karma yoga, one can become very fixed up in bhakti yoga. The principles are very close. So the different processes, the Navavida Bhakti, the different processes of devotional service is basically offering us an opportunity to get connected with Krishna. These are the 9 different processes in Navadha Bhakti. Each person may relate with something. Like we say the example, like Parishad Maharaj, we give the example of Shravanam Kirtanam, Shukdev Goswami and Parishad Maharaj. So there are certain personalities who have perfected their life only by one of the angas. For majority of the sadhakas, we may have to engage in many of those because we may not be expert in only one of them. It's not that we are only in Shravanam or only in Kirtanam or only in service. So eventually, based on our mind, based on our propensities or our personalities, we may have to engage in other aspects also. It's like Prabhupada said, if somebody is interested in able to chant 24 hours, wonderful. But most of us will not be able to do it, which is why we need other engagements. So ultimately, in what way are we able to connect with Krishna? So that is what the Navaveda Bhakti offers us. So if someone is steadily connected in Kirtans, it does not mean that if he is not attracted to Bhagavatam, then he cannot go back. Ultimately, it's in what way are we connecting ourselves with Krishna, and the medium is one of the Navaveda Bhakti. Eventually, gradually, there has to be some elevation, but when the only disclaimer or clarification I want to make here is, the attraction does not mean that the intellectual attraction is different and the attraction towards the spiritual discourses may be on a different platform. I can give 2 examples. One is the South Indian Brahman at Srirangam. When Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sees him here reading Bhagavad Gita upside down or not reading and reciting in a proper meters tone, he just goes and embraces him. Where it clearly shows it's not intellectual relishing that he was doing with Bhagavad Gita. Although he was speaking in different meters, but then he was very, very attracted. He was really looking at the cover page and he was really looking at the compassion of Krishna, how he is Anantakoti Brahmanda Nayak, but he is ready to become a chariot driver of his devotee. He was so touched. So that is beyond the intellectual understanding or attraction. Like Srila Prabhupada also there are many devotees who would hear many times in like Mayapur you may find Bengalis, but you will find personalities like Jananivas Prabhu and Pankajangri Prabhu. They may not understand Bengali, at least in those initial days. I'm not sure of now, but they would just sit. When they are sitting in the class, somebody may come and ask, what do they understand? They may say there is a spiritual vibrations which cannot be denied. So it's a question of, one is an intellectual, if our attraction is based on intellect, then with some doubts it can get crashed also. When there is some serious doubt which pricks in, then when it comes to 5th canto, planetary systems, it can revolve, it can bewilder us. What is this? Matsya Avatar, so huge, practically the size of the universe. You may really start thinking, whether we are in the right books, should we continue? So if we are having an intellectual attraction, it also has the downside of, then such people will also have a lot of doubts. If it is solved, well and good. If it is not solved, is it such a prick that we are not able to continue our regular service? Then one has to really get it solved. But if it is something that one can go on and I know Krishna is Supreme Personality of Godhead, but I want to know some details, exactly how Krishna was living in Dwarka. That's fine. There's no philosophical deviation in this, but we may want to know some details. So some who have intellectual sides may want to have some more details or some understanding about that. But from a spiritual perspective, it's not necessary to have that intellect. We see Gaur Kishodas Babaji Maharaj, the great spiritual master of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, apparently not so intellect, but we find that there was no need to read the scriptures in one sense. But that again cannot be spoken for the mass, that we don't need anything. Ultimately for us, it is anukulesya sankalpa, pratikulesya varjanam. Whatever is helpful in our progress of devotional service, we are ready to accept it. So at some point of time, we are not able to relate more, relish more, but still on a duty platform, we need to do it. If that is a part of the norm of the institution or of the bhakti process delineated of the ashram or of the institution, then one needs to do it. It's not that we are doing everything only when we are relishing it. There are many activities which, as sadhaka means, ultimately it's on a discipline platform. We may not have we may really not have a great relish right now, but we are hoping in a positive spirit and by the mercy of the great acharyas and other devotees, we are hoping that if we continue in this process, because this process is time tested. So even if it is, some people may have intellectual attraction, some others may not have, there is downsides of that also. And at the same time, if we connect from a spiritual perspective, one can benefit from any of the Navavida Bhaktis. Hare Krishna. Sorry for a long explanation. Thank you. You want to add something?
Pandit Prabhu with multiple examples of how sometimes philosophy, a very advanced person may be in a covered situation like Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Chanavatar or Jadabharat, or many examples he gave very beautifully. This question about intelligence aspect, there is one verse in the 15th chapter towards the end. Yo mameva asammudho janati purushottamam sa sarvaved bhajati mam sarva bhavena bharata. Krishna is saying that anyone who knows me to be the Supreme Lord, he is all-knowing, and the result of his all-knowing is he does my Sankirtan and Puja. He will worship me and he will chant my holy names. So the worshipping the Lord and chanting holy name is the conclusion. And the process for coming to that conclusion is philosophical analysis. So either, we, like you said, we are intellectually very awakened, okay, then philosophically understand that Krishna is Supreme Lord, Vasudeva Sarvamati. Then after that you do worship Krishna, chant the holy name. In case somebody already has that faith, that Krishna is Supreme Lord, there is no other shelter for me, Krishna is the only shelter, then he can directly come to the chanting of the holy name and worship of Krishna. But one very important thing, if somebody is chanting the holy name and worshipping Krishna, he should not have any doubts about the conclusions of the Shastra. Those conclusions of the Shastra are presented to him by the Lord in his heart. There is one verse, Yanastaya naro rajanna pramadyeta karhichir dhavan munmilyava netrena patetna skalediha. This verse says, even if you blindfold such a person, he can run on the road of bhakti and he will never fall down. He will never slip, it says. The two eyes represent Shruti and Smriti. Even though he is blind to Shruti and Smriti knowledge, because he has the Shraddha, the bhakti in his heart, and he is properly engaged in devotional service by his Guru. The connection with Guru and rendering of devotional service under the order of Guru, and his firm faith in chanting of the holy name and worshipping the Lord, he has firm faith in it. Because of these qualifications, the Lord in his heart reveals to him Jnana Deepena Bhasvata. Lord will reveal whatever is there in the scripture, the same truth Lord will reveal to him in the heart, and he doesn't have to be a very intellectually astute person. Whatever intellectual person can study, learn, realize and speak, this fellow can speak without studying the scripture, simply by hearing the Guru and following the Guru.
Thank you for writing.
Thank you, Shankar. Hari Bol.